Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I have my 2023 reading wrap up. I am going to be sharing with you all of the books that I read last year, which was 32 books. I had a goal of 30 and I'm super proud of myself for meeting that goal and also going a little bit over. So I'm gonna be sharing with you the 32 books that I read last year. This is going to be a spoiler-free video. I don't wanna put any spoilers in case you guys are watching this video to get recommendations on what you might read next. So I'm just gonna be sharing with you guys some like overarching thoughts of what I thought of the books, if I would recommend them to you guys, and then my rating on a 5-star scale. So I hope you enjoy seeing this video. I have my phone handy because I'm going to be referencing Goodreads pretty much for the whole video. So definitely follow me there if you want to keep up more real time with my reading journey, because I know I don't make these videos too often. So I hope you guys enjoy, and if you want to hear about all the books that I read in 2023, make sure to keep on watching. The first book that I read in 2023 was The Inmate by Frida McFadden. This was so good. You guys know I love my girl Frida, and we definitely started off the year so strong with this one. I loved this book. It definitely kept me on the edge of my seat the whole time. The book follows Brooke, who is a nurse practitioner in a men's maximum security prison. I won't go into too much detail, like I said, because of spoilers, but if you guys have read any of Frida McFadden's books, you can basically never guess what's going to happen. And the epilogue of this book, like I want to say like the last like 4 or 5 pages, absolutely blew my mind and really put this book over the edge for me. The next book that I read in 2023 was The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. This had been sitting on my shelf for a couple months and I was like, hey, I want to try it out. Something cute, something fun. This was just not it for me, you guys. I gave this 2 stars, probably 1.5 stars. I don't think I would recommend this to anyone. It was a slow burn, which I'm fine with a slow burn once in a while, where it really takes like a lot of build up and you're like, oh my gosh, is anything ever gonna happen here? But it was so incredibly painfully slow. There were a lot of repetitive scenes. I felt like the author kept going back and touching on like certain elements and saying like the same things over and over again. Something as simple with like the female main character on the phone with her mom was lasting like 5-6 pages. I think if this book was shorter and sweeter, it was about 440 pages. I think this could have been probably like a 250 page book, if not a little bit less, and just been better. Nothing too great about it, honestly. So about 1.5 to 2 stars here. After that, I read A Thousand Boy Kisses by Tilly Cole. I read this on my Kindle, and I feel like I'm gonna have a lot of people disagreeing with me, but I have the unpopular opinion that I didn't enjoy this book. This book was just way too sad for me, and I do like a good sad book once in a while, like something that's just gonna like rip out your heart and soul and make you cry. I would definitely check some of the trigger warnings and topics in this one. I think that's something that I should have done, because I've talked to other people who read this book and they absolutely loved it. I think it had to do with like timing for me and some of the triggers, honestly, and some things that was happening for me personally. I gave it 3 stars because, like I said, I think it had potential if the timing in my life was better when I read it. And yeah, after this, I felt like I really went into a bad book slump. Just when I thought my book slump couldn't get any worse, we read Gillian Flynn's Sharp Object for the book club that I am in. You guys, I don't even know how to explain this book to you. I did not like it at all. It was the absolute weirdest book I've ever read in my life. Sharp Objects follows a reporter who just did a brief stay in a psych hospital, and she has to return to her hometown to start reporting and investigating some crimes and missing girls in her town. She has like a crazy mom. It was just a very weird book. I felt myself like forcing myself to read this. I gave it 2 stars, which again was probably super generous. I wouldn't recommend this one. Like 1.5, maybe 2 stars. The next book that I read was Twisted Games by Anna Huang, which is the 2nd book in the Twisted series. This was so good, you guys, and it definitely got me out of my book slump. This was exactly what I needed after reading a couple of bad books, and it is the best book in the Twisted series. I will talk about the rest of this series throughout this video because I read 2, 3, and 4 in 2023, but number 2 was the absolute best one. I gave it a solid 5 stars. Chef's kiss. I wish I could read this book all over again. So this follows Bridget, who is one in the friend group that the Twisted series follows, and her bodyguard Is it Rhys or Reese? I'm gonna say Reese. I think that's how you pronounce it, but it's so good. I love a good bodyguard romance. I absolutely loved the dynamic and the relationship in this book. It was such good banter. There was definitely spice in this book, but it also had such a good plot. It wasn't just like all about the spice. It was such a great story. I am team Mr. Larson forever. It was such a good book. Definitely run and read this if you guys haven't yet. For the month of March, our book club book was The X-Files by Morgan Elizabeth. Also read this one on my Kindle. I told you guys I did a ton of Kindle reading in 2023, but this was a really cutesy book as well. I gave this 4 stars. Definitely a little bit predictable at times, but I feel like we all love those kinds of books and we need those kinds of books sometimes, just something that's gonna make you laugh. I was really excited to read that book because I loved 'Tis the Season for Revenge by Morgan Elizabeth, which I had read the previous Christmas season. That book is so good. Also one that you guys have to look into if you haven't read it already. So this one I think I had higher hopes for. It wasn't as good, but still a really good cutesy read nonetheless. My next read was The Housemate Secret by Frida McFadden, which is the second book in the Housemate series. You guys know The Housemaid was my top read of 2022. I absolutely loved that book. And The Housemaid Secret was really great as well. I would give this about 4.5 stars. Again, I think the only reason it wasn't a complete 5-star read for me is that I was comparing it to the original Housemaid. I kind of find myself doing that sometimes when I read a really good book by the author and then I go to explore more by them. I find myself comparing the books, which I know isn't the greatest, but also I felt like I knew what was going to happen having already read The Housemaid. It definitely gave off a similar vibe, so I wasn't as shocked. This was a really good story. It still follows Millie, who is the main character in the original Housemaid book, which I love her story and kind of seeing her growth continue. And it's like, what is she up to now? Short chapters, which I love. Short chapters really help me read through books really, really quickly. And it was still like a solid 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this one. I read book number 2 in the Knock 'Em Out series, which is Things We Hide from the Light. This was one of my most anticipated reads in 2023. Actually, I guess the whole rest of the series was one of my most anticipated reads because I read the last 2 books last year. This follows Nash Morgan, who is Knox's brother from the first book. I can't really go into a lot of detail, I guess, without spoiling much from the first book if you guys haven't started the series yet. It still has that great like romantic comedy aspect, a little bit of a crime aspect. I've said before, these books just have everything that I could want in books, and they make me feel all the emotions, like laugh, cry, funny, sad, concerned. They just touch on so many different things, and it's so much more than being just a romantic comedy or just a book where crime happens. It's a little bit of everything. You're getting a small town vibe, a small town kind of universe of characters that you want to continue to follow. These are just so good. I love Knock 'Em Out Virginia and the whole series with my whole heart. For some reason, I didn't find myself as like engrossed in the characters as I did with the first book, and especially the third book, which I will get into. It was so good, and I just felt myself so obsessed. There was something about Nash and Lena that like wasn't 100% hitting for me with their romance, but it was still a really great book nonetheless, and I think I just liked it more to continue following the series of characters and reading more about the small town. One of my top 5 reads of the year is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is so good. I recommend this book to absolutely everyone. If you guys haven't watched the show yet, please read the book first. It is so good. The show was phenomenal. They just did such a good job, but obviously the book is just always better. It goes into so much more detail. This was my first time reading a book that's like an oral history. If you guys haven't read this book yet, each paragraph is said by someone else. So the whole entire book is basically like a series of written interviews. It takes you along the journey of a band called The Six, led by Billy. And then we also get the story of Daisy Jones, who's trying to be like an up and coming singer and musician who's struggling in her life. She's kind of like young and lost, and the story of how they come together and form Daisy Jones and The Six. You could just really picture the characters. There was so much descriptive detail, what was happening and what people looked like, and it really just transports you to like the 1960s when you're reading this book. It is absolutely phenomenal. So please read this book and then watch the series. It was so good. Definitely like this a lot more than The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So the next book that I read is Twisted Hate, which is the Twisted book number 3. This follows Josh and Jules. This is a best friend's brother and enemies to lover type of situation. So Josh is the brother of Ava from Twisted Love, book number 1 in the series. And then Jules is one of her best friends. If I'm being totally honest with you guys, I don't remember every single thing that happened in this book. I know it was a really great book and I know I really enjoyed reading it at the time, but for some reason there's not a lot of like memorable aspects about it coming to my mind right now. But I really love the relationship between Josh and Jules. I love enemies to lovers. It's definitely one of my favorites, unless it's the Spanish love deception, then that's just like a hard no for me. If you like best friend's brother, if you like enemies to lover, if you like steamy books, you will really enjoy this one. It was a great story. Another one of my top reads this year was Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. Go run and read this book if you haven't. It is such a great read, completely mind-blowing. I've probably told everyone in my life the whole entire plot of this book like over and over again because it was so good, it was memorable, it kept me on the edge of my seat, and it had me so angry the whole entire book. So this book follows Jack and Grace, who from the outside seem like they are the perfect couple. They have it all, a big house, and they have friends over for dinner parties, but of course it is not exactly what it seems like. And how this book ends was just so good. It was like the greatest way to end this book. It was absolutely mind-blowing and one of the better psychological thrillers that I have read in 2023. After that, I read Walking Red Flag by Morgan Elizabeth, which is the second book in the Ocean View series. This book was so bad, you guys. It was just so hard to get through. It was so cringy. I don't know, there was something about it that I just didn't love, and it was disappointing because I love Morgan Elizabeth. It is a brother's best friend romance who follows Gabby and Vic. So Gabby is basically a 28-year-old virgin, and her doctor finds this out and determines to change that for her, if you guys are catching my drift. So yeah, it was just so cringy. I don't know, I didn't like it at all. Local Women Missing by Mary Kubica was the next book that I read, and I actually do have a physical copy of this book, but I just lent it out to one of my friends, so I don't have it with me at the moment. But another 5-star read for me. This was one of my top reads of the year. It's one of those books that starts off a little bit slow, and after the first chapter, I was like, am I going to like this? The story of this book, I like how it's laid out, so it follows the point of view of like 3 or 4 different characters in dual timelines also, and then they come together at the end, which was really interesting. I think it added a lot of depth to the book instead of telling the story in like total chronological order. It was really interesting to get that back and forth, present and past, but then also all the different point of views. It was a great read, and I was completely shocked by the end of this one. I did not see it coming at all, so total 5-star read. I did wrap up the Twisted series in 2023 with the last book, which is Twisted Lies. This follows Stella and Christian, and this was actually my least favorite book of the series. I feel like kind of close with book number 1, 2, and 3 were definitely my favorites, but I didn't really love book 4. I felt like it was a little bit boring. There were still a lot of good elements to it, don't get me wrong, but again, it was extremely long. It was like almost 600 pages, and I felt like there was a lot of hype for this last book and a lot of hype for this relationship, but I felt a lot of aspects of it were a little bit boring and also extremely unrealistic at certain points. Overall, it just wasn't my favorite by Ana Huang. I definitely think if you're gonna read this series, you should finish out all 4 and read these in order, but just know going into it that 2 and 3, in my opinion, are definitely the best. Number 4 just like didn't give what I wanted it to give 100%. I gave it 3.5 stars. The next few books that I have to talk about are actually novellas by Lee Jiaquo. One of my friends introduced me to Lee this year because I was looking for just some easy, quick reads. I really like reading novellas to help me meet my book goal, but then also just to switch it up from like the regular novels and longer books that I'm reading throughout the year. So far throughout this video, I have been going in chronological order of the books that I read, but I think I'm just going to group all of these novellas together just to kind of give some quick ratings back to back. And these are all novellas that take place surrounding certain holidays. They all have a holiday theme to it. Not a lot of plot, not like a really great deep story, I guess you can say. Just some quick steamy reads. These are definitely really great options. So I read Liberty Falls, which is her 4th of July novella, and I gave that one 4 stars. I read Hallows Grove, which is her Halloween novella, and I gave that one 3 stars. And then I most recently read her Christmas novella, which is called Christmas on the 13th Floor, and I gave that one 5 stars. Definitely my favorite one by her so far. It was kind of like enemies to lovers and also a boss kind of romance. It was just so good. And they helped me to meet my reading goal also, because they're only about like 100 to 130 pages usually. I have been so excited to talk about this book. I think my top book of the year, at least top 3. I don't know. I haven't really put too much thought into what my favorite book of the year was, but definitely top 3 for me was The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. This book lives in my head rent-free. It was such a good read. I didn't think I would love it as much because it, again, is just like that typical predictable rom-com. It's called The Bodyguard, so it is of course a bodyguard romance, but the roles are reversed. So in this case, the female main character is the bodyguard, or more of like a secret like protective agent, and then the male, his name is Jack, is a really like high tier actor, and she gets put on a job to protect him. It is just such a good book. I read this really fast. There's just something about Catherine Center's writing which I love. I read it really fast. She's extremely descriptive and really just like puts you into these books. I felt like I was watching a movie the whole time that I read this. And you know when you're reading a book and then you snap out of it and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm reading, but it feels like you're actually watching something. This book put me in that place so many times. If I could give this like a 10 out of 5 stars, I totally would. I loved it so much, and I love Jack. I listened to 3 audiobooks in 2023 from the Miles High series, and I loved every single one of them. The Miles High series is 4 books. I'm on the 4th one now this year. The Miles High Club series follows 4 billionaire brothers and their love interests. The first book in the series is called The Stopover, and it follows Jameson and Emily, who meet on a plane. It is such a good book, extremely spicy also, but these are just such good reads, or should I say listens, if you're gonna listen to them on audiobook. That was 4 stars for me. Loved that one. My favorite in the series so far was definitely book number 2, which is called The Takeover. This follows Tristan and Claire, which was such a good book. This was 5 stars for me, and I think because the male main character in this book, there was just so much character development and he was just so sweet. I loved this one. And then lastly, in 2023, I read The Casanova, which was the 3rd book in the series. I didn't love it as much as Tristan and Claire's story, but it was still great. So I gave this one 4 stars also. Overall, a really great series to listen to if you like billionaire romance vibes. I read my first Lucy Foley book in 2023, which was The Guest List. This follows a couple who has their wedding on an extremely remote Irish island, and there's the bride, the +1, the best man, the wedding planner, and the bridesmaid. Throughout the book, we're getting all of their different point of views until the big twist. I didn't hate this book, but I also didn't love it. I thought I was going to like this a lot more. I gave this 2.5 stars because it was a good concept in theory, and I was really interested to see what happened at the end, but for some reason I just had a tough time getting through this book, and I think it was the writing itself. I think the author is Irish herself, or maybe from the UK, so there is definitely some like jargon and terms that I didn't 100% understand. Interesting story, extremely good concept, and the end was pretty great. It just took me a long time to get through, and I think it was the style of writing for me, so it was like 2.5 stars. I read my first horror book in 2023, and that is Hidden Pictures by Jason Rekulak, I believe is how you say it. I'm probably saying that wrong. I really enjoyed this book for it being a genre that I had never dabbled into before. I didn't think I was going to love it as much, and it was about a 3.5, almost a 4-star read for me. It was really creepy at times. I had to actually like put down the book and take breaks from this, especially if I was reading at night, because it was so creepy. But the overall story to me was so unique, and it definitely kept me hooked. This follows Mallory, who is fresh out of rehab, and she gets a job as a nanny for a little bit more of an affluent family, and she starts caring for their son Teddy, but she kind of notices that like weird things are going on in the house. Teddy starts drawing these extremely weird and like violent and creepy photos. Things got very creepy. I did not see the twist at the end coming at all. My first Colleen Hoover read of 2023 was Youre Perfect. Definitely check the trigger warnings on this book and the topics that this book talks about, but it was a really great read. Definitely heartbreaking. It follows the story of Quinn and Graham and their marriage now, which is definitely a little bit broken, and we're getting some insights, but then we're also flashing back to 7 years prior to when they first met and they started dating, and we're seeing their love story unfold. It was really good. Definitely one of the better Colleen Hoover books in my opinion, and I read through it really quick. Say You Swear by Megan Brandy was a fantastic read, you guys. I wanted to try my hand at a football romance, a college football romance. This was such a good book, and I 100% believe it lived up to the hype. This book was everything I wanted it to be and more. It was just, I loved the style of writing in this book. I loved the story. I loved the characters. There was one character in this book that was really frustrating me, and that is why I only gave this book a 4.5 stars instead of 5 stars. But honestly, looking back, that aside, it was so close to being a 5-star read for me. I love books that just make me feel so many different emotions, not just like one thing the whole entire time. I laughed, I was happy, I was sad. I actually cried reading this book at one point. It was such a good story, and I was so invested. I want to read it again so badly, and I definitely want to check out more by Megan Brandy also, because this was fantastic. I loved it. I haven't had a 5-star Colleen Hoover book in way too long, but I finally found it last year, and that is Too Late by Miss Colleen. It definitely is one of Colleen Hoover's more dark books, which also could be why I also enjoyed this a lot more than some of her other recent books that I've read, but it is about Sloane. Caught up with the alluring Asa Jackson, Sloane has finally found a lifeline to cling to, even if it's meant compromising her morals. When undercover DEA agent Carter enters the picture, Sloane's surprised to feel an immediate attraction between them, and Asa has always been a step ahead of everyone in his life, including Sloane. No one has ever gotten in his way. No one except Carter. Together, Sloane and Carter must find a way out before it's too late. Reading that just like put me right back where I was when I was actually reading this book. I definitely recommend this one. I love Carter. There were just so many good characters in this book, so many crazy moments, just total 5-star read for me. And again, I think top 5 for 2023. Another Frida book that I read was The Cooworker, which I believe is her latest release. This was a really great book. I gave it 4 stars. I think it was a little bit repetitive at some points, which was driving me a little bit crazy, and what definitely pulled this down from being a 5-star read. There were so many things in this book that I felt like we could have done without. On one hand, I'm like, she's doing it to really shape the personality of a certain character, but I was like, oh my God, if she mentions the word turtle one more time, if you read this book, then you'll know. I didn't expect the twist at all. It wasn't like the greatest, most mind-blowing twist that I've read from Frida, but definitely a solid psychological thriller. I would recommend this one. As I mentioned earlier, I did conclude the Knock 'Em Out series in 2023 with Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. I love this book with my whole soul. Definitely a 5-star read. I love Lucien and Sloane's story. I don't know if it's Lucien or Lucien. I say Lucien because Knox and Nash call him Lucy for short, so I'm sticking with Lucien. But I love their story. They're childhood friends, enemies to lovers. Again, the small town vibe. We're still getting that crime story continuing. I loved this relationship. I love this dynamic so much. He's like this big, like head honcho millionaire, like head of his company, is so powerful, and she's like a little small town librarian, which I think was a funny dynamic, but it made for such a good read. And again, I love their story. I love the entire Knock 'Em Out series. I think this might have been my favorite book of the entire series. I think I would rate it 3 then 1, then 2 being my least favorite. But I love Knock 'Em Out. It will forever have my heart and soul, definitely my top series, and it lives rent-free in my head for sure. I was really excited to see that Frida McFadden had a very short Christmas novella called The Gift. It was just not it. I'm not even gonna go into that much depth about it. It was the weirdest story. It was only 50 pages. I think it would have had more potential maybe if it was like 100 to maybe like 120 pages. I gave this 2 stars on Goodreads only because I didn't want to be mean, but it's probably a 1 star. It was just, don't even consider reading it. I didn't like it. I wanted to stick on the Christmas thriller theme, and I found this one on Kindle Unlimited, which was called Last Christmas by Maria Franklin. It was definitely good and it had a good story to it. My only gripe was that I didn't think it was necessarily a psychological thriller. I felt like this was very much just like a family of drama and kind of talking through all the family drama and all the family issues. I didn't really get a psychological thriller aspect because I felt like what was happening was super obvious to me, if that makes sense. So the book follows Neil and Sasha, who are definitely in a struggling marriage, and they go to visit Sasha's family for the holidays, and then something ends up happening and secrets are coming out and people are fighting. It was good. I definitely wanted to know what happened, but also wasn't super surprised, so it was about 3 stars for me. I only read 1 book by Tessa Bailey this past year, and that was Same Time Next Year. I read this on my Kindle, and I also partially listened to it on Audible because, again, the audio was included with the Kindle Unlimited book. It's kind of like a brother's best friend hockey romance. So it follows Britta and Sumner, and Britta's half-brother is on a hockey team, and one of their star players, Sumner, is from Canada, and in order to stay on that hockey team, he needs to get his green card. So this happens on New Year's Eve, where they get married for convenience, and then they would reevaluate in a year from now. Of course, again, a little bit predictable, but I love that sometimes. Just a really good, feel-good, cutesy romance. The final book that I read in 2023 was actually our December book club book, and that is Love Light Farms from B.K. Borison. It follows the owner of a Christmas tree farm where she enters a competition, but on her application she lists that she has a boyfriend and she started the farm with her boyfriend. So then she has to go to her best friend and ask him if he wants to be her fake boyfriend, basically for purposes of the competition. Total Christmas Hallmark movie, but it was a cute read. I will say I felt like the first like 50% of this book was a little bit slow and a little bit boring, but I did enjoy the second half of the book a lot, and I honestly stuck this one out because I loved the mailman character Luca. He was just so sweet. He came from like a classic Italian family, which to me was so relatable. But if you guys are just into like Christmassy rom-coms, I would definitely check this one out. I don't know that I'll read the rest of the series. Maybe next year we'll revisit the Love Light Farm series, but this was pretty good. All right, you guys, so that is going to complete this video. Those are the 32 books that I read in 2023. That is my wrap up and my rating and my reviews. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing this video, although it was a little bit of a lengthy one. I appreciate you guys for sticking around. If you did enjoy, and if you want to see more book content here on my channel, make sure to give this video a thumbs up so I know, and it really helps me out. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to my channel before you leave. I would love to have you guys here as part of my little YouTube fam. If you don't want to miss out on any of my future videos, click that notification bell down below and you'll get notified every single time that I upload a new video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and of course, I'll see you in my next one. Bye, guys.